So I guess one of the main reasons why I came to see you was, first of all, I'd seen the value. So my partner had been and seen you and talked to you about when he was looking at selling the business. And I saw the process that he worked through. So for me, it was a tried and true method because I saw some fabulous results there. And I think the other reason for me would have been, at the time, life was going pretty good, to be fair. I think outwardly, most people would think that, I was coping okay. But I was probably navigating one of the hardest situations I've ever navigated or experienced in my life. And that was the sale of a significant family asset, I'll call it. And it put me in a really high conflict situation. And that was the situation that I was so far out of my comfort zone that I really struggled to cope with things. I'm somebody who naturally likes harmony, relationships, fairness. I value those things. And I was constantly in this environment that I was so uncomfortable. So that's when I decided to come and see you. I thought that I didn't need someone to solve a problem because the problem was complex. It involved extended family that I've been really close to. It's a situation where I was representing my dad. He was in his late 80s and he just wasn't in the health to manage it. So I had that responsibility. I wanted to get it right, but it was too complex for anyone else to solve. So I wanted some tools, some help to understand why that whole conflict, just why it sat so uneasy with me and just consumed me. So I was in a constant state of anxiety. I was second guessing everything. I felt that I was having to be someone that I wasn't. I was put in an environment and meetings that with high conflict that I just was so foreign to me that I pretended to be somebody else. And I would come out and I was drained. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating particularly well. My family noticed it. Probably just not being present. So my mind was constantly on this conflict situation. So I struggled to see beyond it. And at the time I was also building my business and I wanted to do that justice. And so relationships started to suffer. I spent a lot of time prepping for these meetings, like hours and hours of prepping, when potentially I could have just been me and I would have got a better result. So I hadn't undergone any coaching previously, which is interesting given I'm a coach. But what I found was it was really fluid. So I could see there was a structure and I kind of understood that from have seen my partner go through it. But what I found from it was it just evolved depending on my response. And it was almost a little bit like a chicken and the egg. I don't know whether your questions changed because of my response or my response changed because of your questions. But it was great. So it just, the coaching, I think the key thing for me was I was in a high conflict situation and I'd always believed that I couldn't deal with conflict. And so the coaching took me back to why I thought I couldn't deal with conflict. I think you termed it limiting beliefs, which I still use that term. And it was. And I realised that I did have that belief right from a really, really young age as a kid. We got to a stage where I understood that it didn't apply anymore. So that allowed me to put myself in a position where I needed to deal with conflict only when I needed to deal with conflict. So it didn't become time consuming or all consuming. I was able to pick it up, prepare myself, deal with it and put it down. And I vividly remember one day coming in and it just clicked. It literally just clicked where I could go, I don't need to carry this with me anymore. Yes, I can pick it up when I need to, but it doesn't have to be part of who I am every day. And it was like, it literally was a life-changing moment because it just freed me from this dread, this anxiety. In terms of where my business was when I came and saw you, I was running my business part-time. So I was employed part-time, 3 days a week for another organisation. And on the remaining 2 days, plus evenings, plus weekends, I was growing my own business. And I'd always toyed with the idea of growing it further, so eventually going into full time. And following our discussions, or during our discussions, it gave me that opportunity to make that decision based on confidence, probably, as opposed to, I'd always thought it's now or never. Like, if you don't do it, you're never going to do it. But I got to a stage of thinking, actually, now's the right time. So it was more from, I'm confident to make the decision to go full time, as opposed to a place of fear, I guess. And I really remember coming in that day and telling you, you were like, how's your day been? I said, I've resigned. So it was amazing, yeah. And it was just the right time. So working with you, what that meant, what led to that probably was the confidence in who I am, and just, yeah, understanding my values, understanding that to grow my business, I didn't have to sell. Yeah, so that was actually a real big turning point for me. So I've always, again, a limiting belief that I avoided conflict at all costs because I couldn't deal with it, and I could never sell anything. And working with you meant that I learned that I didn't have to convince people to work with me. All I needed to do was communicate really clearly the value that I could deliver, and the right people would connect with me. And they did. And they do. So my business is now at a stage where I'm operating in quite a different space. So I am now operating in the executive space, and prior to that I was more graduate, middle management. So yeah, and again, I remember you challenging me quite significantly on my clientele. I remember the session really clearly where we worked on who my ideal client would be, and I was, that realization that I could deliver the value. We talked about pricing, and you challenged me significantly on my pricing. And that was based on the belief that we talked about, that the value wasn't just in the hours of work I did. It was all the experience that I built and the knowledge I built and the connections up until that point. So once I believed that that value was there, it was really easy to communicate it across all my marketing, my websites, my social media presence, and in person. Yeah. And interesting enough, it was then that I learned to tell a story. So sales to me had always been sales, and we talked about actually it's not sales, you tell your story. And funny, ironically now, I tend to be working with my clients to refine their stories for their next roles. I am incredibly proud of my business that I built. It has exceeded my expectations. It was always going to be something that propped me up along the way, but it is my full-time business. It creates a lifestyle that I love. I know that I'm adding real value. I'd always been really committed to helping people navigate the barriers that were stopping them from getting their ideal role. And that's something that I do, and I get a lot of feedback saying, that people can trust me, that they that I understand what they're going through, and that I change their lives. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, I have sent and referred numerous people through to yourself and Imelda, and that ranges from young adults through to business people, through to family members. And what I say to them, I probably fall back into my storytelling. I talk to them about getting some tools that might help them, not just with where they're at now, but ongoing. And that's when I talk about, the conflict situation for me. So again, I get my message across to them by demonstrating what I did. So I always say, go in with an open mind. Don't necessarily try and fix something. Have a discussion. Don't try and control. If I had tried to control the situation or the conversation when I first came, I think we would have dealt with the conflict, but we would never have headed towards that business side of things. So yeah, my advice is be open, don't control the conversation, let it flow wherever it flows, because often hidden away there somewhere is something that's going to be really impactful for you. And I think sometimes that's where you get the real value, when it's the things you don't see that add the value. I see your ideal clients from an outside of you as somebody who wants to better themselves or in any way. So whether it be the business aspect of things, or whether it be in your own self-confidence or relationships or whatever that might be, if they want to just get something that might make things better or easier or stretch them a little bit, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah, so when I finished the coaching, I felt amazing. I had some clarity, I had some direction, and I had a lot to work on. And then, yes, some years later, now it's evolved. I've still got that belief that I know that when things get tough, and it might be a default, it's hard to change lifelong habits. And it's been a few years, a few decades under the belt. But I now know that I can just take a step back and just challenge the thinking, ask myself some questions, and that has been really useful. So, life hasn't been continuously full of roses, but I feel like I've got the tools, and I think that's why I came to you as a mindset coach as opposed to somebody who could just fix a problem. Because I didn't need someone to fix a problem, I needed somebody to give me the tools that I could use moving forward, because I knew these situations would reoccur, because that had occurred many times. I use, and it's interesting, since referring some other people through to you, and they'll come and talk to me about some of the techniques, and I'm like, I remember that. So I subconsciously or unconsciously use a lot of techniques regularly. The thinking stayed with me, and I use it, and I use it a lot in my own business. So when people are worried that for instance, I work in careers, and if somebody's been made redundant or their role's been restructured or they've had an issue, and then I can work on how we're going to get your story right to stop that belief that it was all about you. And that then tells their story, and then it helps them. So I use it all the time. Yeah, so life is great. There's always hurdles, but I feel that life is manageable. And I mean that in a good way, not that it's, too hard, but that things that come up that, and there has been some significant life events that have happened since then, but I can devote the energy to it. I can deal with the situation, but it doesn't consume me all the time. And then I can carry on and still go and have a great time and do my work and spend time with the kids and the family. So it's been amazing. Life is great. I'm incredibly lucky to have a business that I absolutely love, that I'm really comfortable doing, but I still push myself outside that comfort, and know that I can just be me. I don't have to pretend that I'm okay if I'm not okay, but I don't have to pretend that I'm someone I'm not.